handlers and honeypots. This topic has been coming up in the media as of lately. If you've been following anything that's been going on with Charlie Kirk's passing and Erika Kirk, you may have heard this conspiracy theory that Erika Kirk was Charlie's handler. So if you don't know what a handler is popular in MK Ultra Monarch programming lore, or not so much lore as it is an actual reality for a lot of people. But a handler is somebody there to guide the narrative, guide the script, hold you hostage, make you do what they want you to do, kind of intrude upon your free will, if I may. And I've also made a few other videos talking about how I think that anyone can act as a handler, because I believe we live in a simulation of sorts, whether that is the earth is literally a digital reality, or if there's like a real reality, but there's some kind of digital grid. But the CIA's assessment of the gateway tapes in the 80s talks about how Earth is a hologram, or reality is a hologram. So if you want to learn more about that, go check out my latest video, Our Handlers, the Archons of the Matrix. But in this video, I want to continue talking about handlers. But I want to look at it from the perspective of how handlers can often be disguised as honeypots. Now, honeypot is also, I believe, something that's popular in MK Ultra and Monarch programming literature. But a honeypot would be somebody who's a trap, because they're sweet as honey. So somebody who enters your life that is charming. They may be exactly what you're looking for in a partner. You may start a relationship with them. They may be your husband, your boss, your best friend. Sometimes, this is going to be more in a romantic sense. I was going to say people have family members that can act as handlers, but for the sake of this video, we're talking about this episode, we'll talk about relationships and people who act as honeypots. So, as I was saying, this has come up in the media lately a lot because of Charlie Kirk and Erika Kirk. And this video is not necessarily about that, but just to go into it briefly about why people say that. And I haven't gone down this rabbit hole that far at all. This is just what I've seen just randomly pop up in my algorithm. But the fact that she was in Trump's, I think it was Miss America or Miss America or Miss Arizona or something, pageant, or he owned the pageants back in like 2012. I don't know when he stopped owning them, but he owned it at the time. And there's pictures of her in a bikini as Miss America or Miss Arizona in front of the Trump wallpaper and whatnot. And she had connections to him prior. She's got some questionable family connections who have connections to some kind of, I don't know if it's like a real estate company. It's some kind of company that people were concerned about. And then people were saying that she was the handler because their meetup or their relationship, they were introduced to each other. I think she went in there originally interviewing for a job, and Charlie was like, nope, I'm going to date you. You're going to be my wife, or whatever he said. I don't know. But all of that to say, if you want to look more into that, go look into that. There's plenty of videos. But this is just using that as some context and as an example for how these things can potentially play out in real life. So, have you ever had a situation where you met someone and you thought that it was by chance, it was a very synchronistic meeting, you fell in love with them or they love bombed you, everything was great for a little bit until you started noticing the subtle control tactics, the manipulation, the toxicity, the fact that this person was not treating you in a healthy way, and you may start to notice that all of a sudden your energy is drained, you're not doing what you used to love to do, you're no longer on the path that you were on. Maybe they even sabotage you when you have important things come up. Like say you wanted to do a specific job, or you wanted to be a teacher or make videos or be a content creator or something. And then all of a sudden you meet somebody and every idea you share with them, every bit of progress you share with them is now all they have to say about it is things that make you question your narrative. So they make you feel stupid for pursuing that. They criticize you all the time, etc. Now, I was going to say, I am in no position to talk about what's going on with Charlie and Erika, but this can become dangerous when you are in a position of influence and power in society. So Charlie Kirk controlled I don't know how much Turning Point was worth, like millions of dollars, and he was starting to go against specific narratives, so that's why people think that he was at this time, so they could turn over the reins to Erika, and maybe she was prepped and groomed for this her whole life. But my question is, which I presented in another video too, do the handlers even know that they're handlers? Or are the handlers also victims of Monarch programming or MK Ultra, and they've been groomed their whole life for a position like this? So now I want to get into the fun stuff and the friggin' scary stuff, because this can be happening a lot more than we think, even for those of us who may not have high positions in society or positions of grand importance that are worth a lot. But considering the fact that we live in a world which is eerily similar to Westworld, with the amount of digital surveillance, I can't say that word ever, that we have, and AI algorithms, AI technology, dating apps, and that's what I want to get into today, because I received a comment on my channel the other day that was talking about, I think they shared that they were kidnapped, and it reminded me of a couple movies actually that I saw recently. I forget the name of this one movie, but it was about this group of influencers. They were using a platform called Fame. I think it was F-A-Y-M-E. And they got offered the opportunity to go to Thailand, all expenses paid, vacation, to get sponsors. So they were promised 1 million followers or whatever amount of followers they needed to get a sponsor, or they were offered sponsorship deals. And there was this one girl that was targeted. She was like from Illinois, Midwestern girl, not like the other influencers who are often catty or what's the word I'm thinking of, like superficial. Like she was the most real one, right? And she joined this program because her father hurt his back and they were gonna have to sell their farm or something. So she had good intentions going into it, like she wanted to help her family, which I know there's a lot of people who want power and influence so that they can use their platform for good, and maybe it's to help their family and donate to charities or whatnot, right? So not all of the people that want to be an influencer have negative intentions with it and are doing it for selfish reasons. So in this movie, she was one of them. So she goes on an all expenses paid vacation to Thailand with a group of influencers who have a lot more, a lot more followers than she does, and a bigger platform than she does. So they all, they think they're being sponsored by a vodka company or alcohol company or something, and they go out every night and their job is to go take pictures in all these clubs and use the product and have fun and post pictures on social media. So they've got like hundreds of pictures that are being used for the campaign. And then, I don't know how long it is, like a week or so of being there, they get drugged one night, and then all of them get taken to this boat where there's bidders there trying to buy them. So they were being sold in a Trafficking ring. And it's a happy story. They get away. But it raises some serious questions, not only because, the elite have to tell us what they're doing, or maybe I don't know if this movie was inspired by real events or had stories from real people who have really experienced this in real life. I don't know. But anyways, the scary thing about this in particularly was that these people were being tracked on social media and scouted before they even knew what was happening. So they were being sold a vision, a dream to have X amount of followers, a dream to have love, admiration, lots of money. And they were getting that, so they were involved with these people who had the means to deliver the fame, the followers, the money, and the resources. But they were doing so because they were trying to buy and kidnap these influencers. And the reason they were able to, in some cases, get away with it is A, they were in another country, B, they had enough pictures of these influencers on social media that they could use either AI technology to replicate the influencer's voice or page. They could continue posting on the page and the account to make it look like the person was still alive. So everybody on the outside thinks, oh, they're just in Paris exploring the summer. Oh, they just left because they were unhappy in their relationships. So they craft these entire stories after they traffic. I don't think I was supposed to say that for the algorithm. After they take these individuals. So that got me thinking, yikes, this is absolutely something that could be going on today. And when I've shared my own personal experience on this channel, a lot of the experience a lot of the content I'm inspired to share is because of this particular situation that I found myself in about a year ago when I was involved with, I'll call them the Hollywood people, but I don't want to share too much, but I do want to share some tips for you guys watching today, because I believe with every fiber of my being that I was in a situation that could have ended up similar to that. And I'm not saying that these people were necessarily for sure involved with that, but as I'm thinking back to the situation, I'm putting two and two together, I'm noticing a lot of red flags here that I want to share with you guys, because I think if you live in a big city, Dallas, Denver, Austin, Phoenix, Cleveland, maybe even Cincinnati, I don't know, but bigger cities, especially, Los Angeles, I'm sure is a big hub, I don't know. I'm just throwing out names here because that is, especially on the West Coast, when you're by other countries, you're near the border. So it could be, Miami, Florida. I don't know why I didn't think that. I'm sure that's a huge one. I just saw a story that somebody posted on social media about that too. But my point is that these have connections to border towns. And because there's so many people out here who are obsessed with fame and followers, and they're just mindlessly consuming alcohol and substances, and they're blindly trusting people that they meet on the internet just because that person has some kind of influence or following. People in my generation blindly trust people that they meet on the dating apps. So you could literally be brushing elbows with people who are involved in these kind of practices, and they're using AI and dating apps and preying on people who are desperate to become famous or who don't have a lot of financial resources so they can control you with money. But there are essentially people preying on people like that. And then it would be as simple as contacting you on social media, probably hanging out, maybe even just a couple of times, but these people would be honeypots for these organizations. So how might you know if you meet a honeypot? Well, first of all, they'd be very attractive and charming and loving and they'd be sweet. Somebody that you would want to hang out with. They would probably make you feel really special when you're with them. They'd make you feel chosen or picked out. And especially when it comes to things that other people may have overlooked about you. For example, let's say you're highly intelligent, but you're also beautiful. So most people look at the surface and they don't recognize your intelligence. So for girls like that, maybe they would know because of the information they have on you from social media profiling and AI, they already have some kind of profile or, a talented or, I guess a talented profiler could probably just look at somebody's social media profile and say, okay, these are this person's insecurities, this is what they're after, this is what they want. So they could potentially teach someone how to get close to that person. So when they are doing that, so that's one way they would reel you in, by having information about you and knowing your vulnerabilities and weaknesses. And one of the ways they may do this is through the other handlers in your life. Okay, and that's kind of how it was for me. I hate even talking about this stuff, it sounds so crazy, but like the main, I'll call them like a handler type person, but like somebody who was posing as my friend, and they were getting me to divulge all of my like deep feelings, relationship and romantic experiences. They were there for me when my ex-boyfriend literally kidnapped me and took me on a joyride in his car and tried to crash into a friggin' medium and off me. So I was in a very vulnerable state when I started confiding in this person more. So if you are a person that's been in a vulnerable situation, that's one way they could infiltrate your life, by posing as the friend, especially if it's like girl, guy, in hetero situation. So this person doesn't want anything from you romantically or sexually. They just are there to be your friend or a business mentor type person. And they're overly invested in your love life. Like they are, oh, you should date so-and-so, or, oh, tell me more about so-and-so. Do you like them? What do you think about this? And then they tell you, they analyze your relationships with you, or kind of steer your narrative at how you might feel about that person based on what they say and their perception of that person that they want you to perceive the person as. So this could be, any sex, any gender. So flip the roles if you need to. But I've talked about triangulation in some other videos. So that's one way people can triangulate. So they would have like your one main, handler person who would be there as the friend, and the person who's kind of setting up these relationships in a way, or they're acting as the gatekeeper for your relationships. And then they're maybe connected to you strongly because you share a business, or you share some kind of dream or goal together, or something like that. But the honeypot people would maybe potentially be in communication with these main handlers, we'll call them that, and that could be one way they're getting information. They could also be getting information about your likes, what you're attracted to, personal points of pain and vulnerability because of what you share on social media, because of AI, and perhaps they have connections to information shared with intelligence agencies. So they have some kind of way of digitally tracking you. So that's how they get information to know who to present themselves as in order to either use you. So this could be for a number of reasons. Maybe it's a literal kidnapping type ring, or maybe it is more so they're part of a group of, there's some kind of secret society, a group of witches or warlocks, and they're siphoning energy from people with high frequency, or people who have the ability to really make a difference and an impact on the planet, the pure-hearted people, those of us who are born with natural psychic abilities, natural charisma, natural intelligence that might be a threat to some of these new world order agendas. So those are reasons why you would be targeted, and the honeypot knows everything about you. So they would come into your life in a synchronistic way. So maybe they're introduced to you by somebody. Maybe you meet them as maybe somebody who you dated or who you were friends with were like, hey, you should meet my friend so-and-so. Maybe that's another form of triangulation, by the way, because if you're comfortable with one person and one person has gained your trust, then you're more likely to trust somebody else that person introduces you to. So that's how I'm not, this is all speculation, and I don't want to make anyone paranoid. So at the end, I will share tips for how we can protect ourselves from this. But I believe this is how these organizations work, these blackmail organizations. I think they operate in groups, and I think they need that initial person to build trust with you, the person who's acting as the friend or the main handler. And then if they only maintain their boundaries as a friend and nothing more, they don't risk trauma bonding or the relationship stuff that can kind of mess up a lot of relationships and make you lose them. So if it's just somebody who's a friend, you're more likely to keep trusting and confiding with them. And then they, on the side, can set up all of these meetings with all these other people that they want you to be tied to. So whether these people are literally like the movie I talked about, like they're spying on you somehow or watching you digitally, and maybe they, have connections with the main handler and they're like, hey, I'd really like to be, to date so-and-so. Can you hook me up? And then that person is acting as the handler, person is acting as a liaison, and he's having, telling those people, trust the process, act this way, present yourself as this way, this is where her weak points are, this is what you can do. Or if maybe you meet these honeypot type people through like a recommendation for a podcast or an acting opportunity, or they have a venue for an event, but there's always some kind of connection to the handler. And the common denominator in all of these relationships, if you've ever been in a similar situation like this, might be that all of these relationships are draining or toxic in some way, and there are practices of abuse here, clear practices of abuse, and they're using the handler's information on you or AI or whatnot to continue to abuse you in this way because they have all this digital information on you. So digital mind control. And then the other thing that was suspect for me when I was thinking back on some of these situations, this one particular situation, was that this person that I met, when I first met them, they told me they weren't looking for a relationship, which is fine because I wasn't either, which is also probably why I was like in a space to be targeted. But they were telling me how they always were on dating apps, and they just, any night of the week they want to hook up with somebody, they just go on a dating app. So I did not date this person long. I just hung out with them like twice after I realized like they're a walking red flag and a dangerous individual. So luckily my intuition and discernment was enough to keep me safe. But when I did hang out with this person, I was not sober. I had been introduced to a community of people who were all interested in comedy and music and acting and podcasting. And it's common in those circles that people are always bond over using substances or drinking. And this is why I always preach sobriety, because when you're under the influence of substances, whether that's alcohol or MJ, you're very easy to control. It's literally pacifying us. So you're not exercising your discernment in the full way that you could. And that's how we get mixed up in these, that's how we can get mixed up in these types of honeypot type relationships or toxic relationships, because we're not paying attention, because we're more focused on the payoff. When am I going to be famous? How many more followers am I going to get? When is I'm out of MJ, I need to go to the store again. So we're distracted by the superficial, while behind the scenes there are people who may also be partaking in the superficial with us, because they're drinking with us, they're chasing fame with us. But behind the scenes, they've got a network of I don't know, a network of what? A network of something that they're connected to that they can use against you. So whether they're, trying to feed off your energy and siphon energy from you for their own manifestation ability, which, side note, the person I'm referring to was also a warlock and also mentioned manifestation and how him and his buddy used to hook up with the girls so they could manifest stuff. And I've seen these people hook up with people, and then the next day, boom, they manifest an apartment, boom, they manifest more money, a car, or whatever. So whether that's an illusion and that's a gift from whoever's sponsoring them, or if they're using real magic because they are using sex magic, which is when the movie Weapons is a great example. That wasn't sex magic, but that was using hair and blood in magic rituals to control people. So was that a literal, representation of what witches and warlocks can do if they have your hair that you shed while you're out and about, that you shed at their house when you use their restroom, a pad or tampon if you're a female and you leave it behind in the garbage can? Can these people, are they sick enough to go back and get that? Or are they using your fluids when they engage, with you in intimate ways? I don't know, but I think there are absolutely organizations and people that do this, because I've met some of them, and it's incredibly disturbing when you see that on, to a certain extent, this magic is very real and powerful. But there's, user beware. What am I going to say? Just because it works doesn't mean that those people are immune to karma, and I'm going to get to that story in a second. But sorry, I'm all over the place. I'm trying to make sure that I stay safe while I'm on the trail. But these people who are engaging in these practices are very real. And the other thing that this person in particular was using, he was using dating apps to meet people, to engage in magic with, intimate magic with, so they could manifest things like cars and houses and money. And they also claimed that their job was an OnlyFans manager. But the odd thing about this person, like I said, I only hung out with them like 2 or 3 times in person, and I started kind of like putting a lot of red flags together, but we talked and text and stuff. So as I was getting to know them or whatever, and I noticed that they always seemed to have money, and they were always talking about money, and they had like thousands of dollars to throw down on these Airbnbs or these hotels, like penthouse suites, like crazy amounts of money, but they never seem to be busy working. So that's a huge red flag. Like, how do you have this money? That means you either are doing some kind of shady things and you have some kind of sponsor, so you're literally the honeypot for this kind of activity. And another red flag that just seems weird, in addition to those other red flags I just mentioned, is that they were connected to real estate. And I'm not saying that everybody who's connected to real estate or has a real estate job is doing shady stuff, but I would imagine that if somebody's involved in satanic kind of stuff, that they may have connections to real estate, because that would give them access to empty houses to do this stuff in, where they could do whatever they want in those houses, like set up cameras and spy on people. And I will say one other thing from that event. When I went, one of the times that I went to this person's Airbnb or hotel or whatever that they had rented, when we hung out, I, like I said, was not in a sober state of mind. So that person was mixing drinks for us and mixing, like a nice little THC thing. But when I was there that night, I saw, this is the craziest experience I've ever had. I thought I saw a crack in the matrix, and I thought I looked at his face at one point and saw like pixels. So I don't know if my reality was cracking and breaking and I was having a spiritual experience, or if something could have been slipped into one of my substances or my drinks to make me hallucinate and think I was having that type of experience. And that's not so far-fetched to think when you live in a big city like that, and that person has access to money and sponsors and a lot of followers on social media, always surrounded by like OnlyFans girls, which is basically legal, prostitution, legal legalized. So did they put, DRUG me or put something in my drink like MK Ultra style where they would put LSD in somebody's drink without them knowing? But the other thing that was weird about that night is that I had this feeling that people were watching, and I don't know how to explain it. I thought maybe it was like angels and demons or something, like my mind wasn't in the right place. But in retrospect, I think back to how that person had connection with real estate, to secret societies, and always had access to money and these platforms, and they were always surrounded by their own handler types. Like, it's like they could never be alone. They were always, they showed up at one of my events once with a girl that they were dating, and I swear to God, the energy emitted from her, like she felt like a vampire. I've never met a person like that whose energy felt so dark and cold, and she was pale white and like disgustingly skinny. So I immediately thought, like, either you're addicted to like meth or something, because her energy was off, or it was like a literal like vampire. And I don't know, maybe this guy was kind of groomed by then. And then at the end, my last connection or contact with him was like him trying to pay me to hang out with him and some other girl. So they were using one of my vulnerabilities at the time, which was a lack of finances, and thought that that might be enough for me to bend my morals and say, yeah, I'll go like have a hookup with you and some girl that I don't even know. I was literally disgusted, by the way, because I did not like their energy, and it's just obvious to me that something was going on. Why else would you be so desperate to sleep with somebody or offer to pay them to hang out with you or whatnot, right? So red flags all over that one. And I, all of that to say, I've just been thinking a lot about this situation recently as I'm learning more and more about handlers and MK Ultra and Monarch programming and secret societies and all that. And at least in that situation, there was just like too many odd things about it. And ultimately, I ended up, I see something. I thought that was like a crystal, but it's not. It's a piece of glass. Ultimately, I ended up walking away from these people, and eventually I just blocked them because I realized I didn't know at the time. I didn't know really anything about MK Ultra or Monarch programming. But as I mentioned in other videos, I discovered that book, The Illuminati Formula Used to Create an Undetectable Total Mind Controlled Slave, by Cisco Wheeler and Fritz Springmeier, around that time. And when I was reading through it, I saw a lot of these tactics used in the book to program people were being used on me in real time by these people. So I'm not saying for sure that they were involved in it, but I'm just saying, even if that book was just to, wake me up and share information for the sake of me getting out of that situation and finally realizing, hey, I need to block these people and I need to not go spend time with them or give them any access to my life. I'm blocking all of them on social media. Anyone that I get a red gut or red flag feeling about in my gut, like, you get blocked. I don't care about hurting people's feelings anymore, especially after being in such a close call with this potential situation. So like I said, whether or not, like, if I had hung out a couple months, like, I always ask myself, what if I had said yes to money and hanging out with them? Like, would it be like that one movie where eventually they would have got me alone in like a hotel or something and then tried to sell me off to somebody? Or would it just have been a cycle of trauma bonding and more abuse where they wanted to, siphon my energy through the act of intimate acts or even just emotional talking to somebody? Even if you're not being intimate with them and you're just giving your mental and emotional energy, that's still a way of siphoning, because it's distracting you from pursuing what you want, and it's feeding off your emotions, which is what these people need to survive, which is what archons and demons and disembodied spirits, they need. So as somebody who's under massive demonic influence, like a potential handler would be, especially if they're involved in like secret society stuff, if they're under the influence of demons, the reason these people who are summoning demons and the reason why they're able to get power or prestige or money or whatever they get from the demons is because they're siphoning people's energy, like, through keeping them in states of fear and lower consciousness. But now here's, the good news, the happy ending. all of these experiences that I've had, that was just one example of a potential massive red flag experience. But there's a couple other people from that group that I briefly dated or hung out with who I had a lot of questions in my gut about. And it took me, close to almost a year to kind of wake up to what was happening and understanding the control tactics that were going on. But as I said in my last video, like these handler type situations can also be a catalyst for spiritual awakening, which in my case it was. Once I was awake to the programming, I could walk away from it. And karma is so sweet. Justice is so sweet, because the one person that had the real estate connections and the OF girls and whatnot, I saw on a website, on a local website that somebody showed me, that he had been sued for like 10 grand and kicked out of his apartment that he probably manifested when practicing SEX magic. So it's kind of like that rule of magic, like what you put out there to the universe will come back to you in threes. Maybe not every time, but you will. If you're a demonic person and you have negative intentions, I promise, like I'm seeing it with my own eyes, you will meet your match at some point. And I believe that because I'm protected in whatever way, and because at the end of the day, I never stopped believing in God or Jesus or anything like that. And side note, for anyone struggling with nightmares or people who are remote viewing you or spying on you in your dreams, which is also something that I experienced by these people, just saying Jesus a couple times and like truly believing in the power of Jesus. You don't even have to necessarily like be Christian or like belong to a certain church to believe in the power of Jesus Christ. So even just saying that immediately broke me out of nightmare states. And I had a couple of dreams that were absolutely terrifying, which I also credit for helping me escape these scenarios and see the truth about what these people were doing. One of the dreams was, as I've shared with you guys, homesteading is one of my dreams, and my handler type people knew this. And I had a dream one night that I was at this beautiful lake somewhere in Utah or the desert, and then there was a lake, and I met a group of people, and they were surrounded by horses and water and all the homestead things I wanted to be surrounded by. But when I looked up closely at this girl's fingernails, they were bitten off, almost like she was ridden with anxiety. And then I walked to a house with them, and I saw a guy with a dog, and he was very nice and polite in my dream. But when I looked at his eyes, they were glowing yellow or red or something. So it gave me a red flag, but I ignored that too. And then I went in the house with these people, and we were having a party. Everything was fine. Everyone was like, "Oh yes, I work for so-and-so." And it was almost like going to one of those MLM networking parties where everyone's so nice to you, but then at some point the script flips, and they're like, "All right, so now this is how you're gonna like charm people to get their money." Like I literally was involved in an MLM thing when I was like 19, and these people schmoozed the crap out of me to get my $400 that it took to buy in. And then all of a sudden I start showing up at these gatherings that they were doing, and they're all like, "All right, now this is what you're gonna tell people. This is the script you're gonna use to get people to buy." And then I'm like literally listening to them tell me how they duped me into giving them my money. And I was like, I'm not doing this to other people. Like sales is manipulation. I don't care. Like not all sales, but it can be. And I do not believe in manipulative sales tactics like that. So I was not successful at MLM. And yeah, so anyways, that's the vibe of this space in my dream that all these people had. And then out of nowhere, there's an orgy happening, and I'm like, okay, now is my time to leave. And I try to leave, and then out of the hallway, all these people in red robes and red like pope hats come out of the walls. And in my dream, in that moment, I knew I could not leave, and I had already sold my soul because I ignored the red flags. And when I woke up, I had the fear of God in me, that I was like, geez, like this is what I think I've been picking up on about these people. Like there's sinister intentions. There's some kind of religious something that's going on. And that's what my intuition was picking up on. And that was right before these people were like contacting me and trying really hard to get me to hang out with them and meet these new people. And then some guy from their network was in Hollywood, kept trying to get me to go to LA, which would have been wonderful for them because it would have separated me from my support system out here and made me dependent on whoever I would have moved out to pursue. And not to mention that every single one of these people I met through this handler type situation was trying to take my podcast and put it on their network to get me famous or whatever, but they wanted to have control over my creative work. And if I even tried to say like, well, how about we go this direction, they would yell at me and use abuse tactics, and it was horrible. So I gave up on my dreams of becoming famous with the Starletta Show podcast and stopped ties with all that. But that was one dream that I had that reminded me, about a Diddy party, because at the Diddy parties, they talk about, I've heard some testimonies from people there that talked about how they had hallways and mirrors. And that was another thing that was common in this group of people that I was, that were trying to recruit me or siphon from me. I don't know, whatever they were doing. But that dream was hallways, and then it was the religious kind of robes and pope hats for whatever reason. And I knew in that moment that, like I said, I had sold my soul in the moment, and you would have had no way of escaping. So I think was a glimpse of real life and what's happening with some celebrities. I think that once you're in a certain way, like you're far enough in, you can't leave, or they have big enough networks, and they use things that, like I said, AI or technology and mind control have shown them about your vulnerabilities, so they hold that against you, and they use blackmail and stuff to keep you in line and keep you working with these organizations, whether they groom you to be a honeypot for someone else to bring other people, because that's what I feel like I was being groomed for. I feel like they were trying to turn me into this face for their nonprofit, of all things. It was a nonprofit because, what better way to put down people's guards than by starting a nonprofit and trying to do things for the community. But they had me be the face of it, and then they were having me recruit all of these young people in their 20s under the guise of, we're going to build a community, and we're going to have grow our own food and all organic and all this stuff, and it's all about promoting art. But in reality, I saw the person who was running it and controlling me, my business partner, whatever, like so toxic, so like he hated people. All he did was talk crap about the people that he was trying to put shows on for. And then, like I said, trying to get me to confide in him about my love life, trying to set me up with all sorts of people, always trying to do business arrangements and try to get me to go to LA to be on a podcast. And then when he got back from the podcast, this is another dose of karma for him. Like somebody stole his Louis Vuitton super expensive tie. And also that same person who was doing Magick on me literally cared so much about their car, because they had like an expensive car with vanity plates, and then their car got somebody randomly hit their car, which cost money for them to repair it. So these are both signs from the universe, like those black magic magicians are getting their karma in those ways, at least. And then the third guy that was in the group ended up in the psych ward. So these people eventually get their karma if you look around, and you don't even have to lift a finger. All you have to do is pray and trust in your own discernment and your own intuition and stay awake to these tactics. And the last thing I want to share is another dream I had about, he was trying to get me to meet with his parents or something, and it just seemed sketchy. He wanted my help in helping them with their business or something. And I had a dream a couple of nights before they were supposed to meet that I was supposed to meet with them. I had a dream that they were a family of vampires, and the son, who was the person trying to recruit me to go meet with them, had a disfigured face. It kind of reminded me of the movie Vanilla Sky, where he had like a mask on, but he was super charming and had a very mercurial energy. So he was trying to, he was like the jester that they used to bring people to whatever deeper level they were trying to get these people in. So I had a dream that he was the jester trying to sacrifice me to his family of vampires. And then in my dream, I dreamt of like flooding and dogs. And, my dream is to have an animal sanctuary and animal rescue. And in my dream, when I was having dinner with the vampire family, all the dogs were like in the river being swept away by the current, which to me was a symbol of, okay, if I'm putting my focus and energy on doing this person's agenda, because they've been the one calling the shots the whole time, I've just been basically going along with his script because I've been abused by my last boyfriend, and I needed a strong masculine presence that wasn't going to only use me for my looks. So somebody who respected my voice and my ideas, which on some level he did, but he was still very much calling a lot of the shots. And a lot of times he did agree with like some of the, you know, graphic design and stuff that I had going on, but also very much calling the shots. And what was I going to say? So basically my dream was telling me that if I continued to go along with his narrative and his agenda, it was going to take time away from my dreams of helping animals. So all of this to say, hopefully you have an idea of some red flags to watch out for. Watch out for dating apps. Watch out for people trying to take you to hotels. Watch out for people who have a lot of money and you don't understand how they have all this money when they never work because they always have free time. Watch out for people who use triangulation, who enter your life. Like, are there like 5 people who enter your life at one time? Is one of them acting as a friend and the other ones are acting as honeypots? Are they trying to use money, fame, influence, power, or something else that they're dangling like a carrot in front of your face to get you to comply with these things, or to keep you distracted while they're siphoning energy from you, or worse, gaining your trust so they can sell you to somebody else in a real life kidnapping scenario. Let's hope to God that's not really real for the majority of people watching, but it's definitely something that has happened, that can happen. So that is why I always teach people discernment, discernment, discernment. And one of the ways that we can be discerning is through sobriety. And I know people don't want to hear that. I'm not shaming anyone for using, because I know how appealing it can be. But if you truly want to make sure that you're protected from mind control and that you're a sovereign human being, you have to be very careful and treat your body like a vessel. Don't allow them to put their poisons in your body under the guise of like, oh, it's helping me feel like me. Everybody's doing it. It's cool. MJ helps me sleep and heals my trauma. Like, I'm not saying it doesn't help some people. It might not be better for you based on where you came from, but it's one step in the journey. I have talked about this in other videos. Like, when you're at this low level of guilt and shame and an experience of trauma, and then you get out of it, maybe Mary J is the next step to make you feel a little better. But there's a spot up here where you could be operating, which is called clarity of mind, a raising of consciousness. But the MJ and certain substances will keep you trapped in this mid-tier level. So it keeps you trapped to the frequency grid. But to each their own, right? I'm just glad that I stopped, because I got a lot more clear about what was really going on. I was no longer pacified. I was no longer, it was robbing me of being vigilant about who I was giving my energy, time, space, resources with. So I always encourage sobriety if you can, because you want to make sure that your mind is clear and that somebody's not, like, if you're a person who's always looking to have a good time, you cannot trust that the people around you aren't going to spike your drink with something, especially if you notice these other red flags like NLP, triangulation, secret society, fascination. They're always talking to you about conspiracies. They're trying to convince you that there's an apocalypse timeline and you're going to be saved if you hang out with these people and all these other people are going to be like swept away. Okay, so I believe that maybe that is one potential timeline, but you feed that timeline and you make it more of a reality if you give your attention to it. And like I said in my last video about reality being a hologram, the holographic universe, everything exists as a potentiality. So the apocalypse timeline is a potentiality that could happen. But you don't have to be on that time loop. You can be on a different loop. You can be on the, kind first contact with aliens if you want. You could be on the Homestead group. You could be on a peaceful world for all. Everyone waking up from mind control together. Like, you get to choose the reality that you manifest and step into through your consciousness, through your conscious attention. And you're going to be able to be in a higher vibration if you're not doing substances. And I created an ESP development course. I hate feeling like I'm selling you guys stuff, but I truly believe in this course. This stuff saved my life. And helped me break free from mind control, helped me have boundaries, helped me break free from toxic relationship cycles and codependency. And I've compiled it all into an affordable course for you. I'm not going to charge you $555 or $2,000 something to take my course. It's $55. That is such a steal compared to what these other creators are selling their courses for. So I set it at that price because I'm hoping more people will be able to afford it, and I can still make an income from my work that I'm doing, because I have to make an income or else I can't continue to make these videos. So that's the investment that you're helping me support. You're through supporting me in those ways by working with me one-on-one, by purchasing my ESP course, my moon calendars, or supporting my channel in any way. You're helping this information get out there to people. So thank you for that. If you're interested in working with me or purchasing my ESP course, it's all in my description. And I'm also available on TikTok or Instagram at Statements by Alex. I don't have time to answer every single message because my channel is growing pretty fast. So it's nothing personal if I don't get back to you, but I try my very best to respond to all my personal messages. So thanks again for being here. I hope this video was helpful, and I'll see you guys in the next one.